All right, I think we're recording and we're in. Sorry for the confusion there. We this is our first time, as I'm sure all of you is your first time, doing this virtual PGA show format, but I think it's relatively self-explanatory. Yeah, we had the bands going already. For those of you who have just logged in, or for those of you who've been in for a bit, we got quite a few of you on here now. I'd like to introduce to you the moderators for this session. So we have our ambassador, Jonathan Yarwood, based in Bluffton, South Carolina right now.
Hey guys, thanks for coming out.
Jonathan has been teaching the game for a really long time. He's been involved with Swing Catalyst now for 3 years, 2 years. What has it been?
Yeah, 3 years actually. Yeah, transform my teaching as well.
Awesome. Brilliant. He's been working. He works with a lot of really good players, a lot of beginning players, a lot of junior golfers, kind of all over the spectrum. So really excited to have Jonathan with us here. So Jonathan and I will be chatting. We also have our U.S. sales manager, Tim DeJarlais, with us right there. He is, if you have any questions related to the system or sales or anything like that, Tim can definitely answer those for you. But I think the point of this session is to dip into Jonathan's wealth of knowledge and experience in using the plate and helping players of all different levels. So senior PGA Tour players, PGA Tour or Champions Tour, I guess you call them, LPGA, he's worked with the gamut all the way up to little kids just learning the game. So a wealth of knowledge from Jonathan. So I'll let him kind of introduce himself, maybe talk a little bit about your journey using the plate and what it's helped you do, and then we'll get into some more specific examples.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I really enjoy being involved with Swing Catalyst. I mean, I thought I knew what I was doing before I got a Swing Catalyst, but realized I kind of did and I kind of didn't. There was too much guesswork involved, really. And I love the tagline, why guess when you can measure? So I'm all about measurement now. I've got obviously the 3D motion plate, TrackMan, video running. And, so when I do see someone for the first time, I can get a 360 view with no opinion, just with pure hard facts and data that I can then measure my intervention against and then show, the fruits of my labor, really. I enjoy that side of it. So as I said to you, as everyone was piling into the room, the great thing about the Swing Cat, in my view, you're basically seeing inside the motor of a car as it goes down the road. And you're seeing things that you actually can't see with your naked eye. And so it allows me to tune forces, which we'll go into in different ways for different people, and improve speeds as well as accuracy and stuff. And, you've talked about the gambit of players. I've worked with obviously kids and developed them from 11 years old to the tour, and also taken, PGA Tour players and turned them into major winners. So, it can help all areas of people. And, it's a real privilege to be able to use it on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think looking under the hood, I think it is super important, or a super important reason why, a ground reaction force plate or Swing Catalyst is super important in teaching. And, I've heard a lot of people say that they're pretty much human launch monitors now, right? They think they can guess to a pretty close degree the path and the face and the angle of attack and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's ever going to be possible with ground reaction force plates. I don't think you'll ever see somebody that will claim to be a human ground reaction force plate, because I think I've probably looked at more swings on a 3D ground reaction force plate than anybody on this planet, and I get fooled all the time. I watch the video, I'm like, oh, it's got to be this, and then I look at it, I'm like, well, no, it's not. So yeah, they fool you all the time, and so that's why, like you say, you could go down the wrong path, or you could, make some wrong decisions. And I think a good teacher like you in the past would figure it out eventually, right? But it would probably just take you longer. You might go down the wrong path for a little while.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just less trial and error. Right. It's like, okay, just pinpoint it. So, the process is faster. The students got more faith in you because they can see the data and the evidence. It's not like, well, I think this, I think that. It's like, okay, this is what's happening.
Right.
This is the solution.
Yeah. And I think especially with the younger students, I've heard a lot of teachers say that, younger students, they're on their phones all the time. There's always, they don't just agree with you, right? They need some form of data or some feedback to say that, hey, no, this is right. And I've heard that from a lot of different students, or a lot of different coaches who use this with any level of player.
Yeah, and they also like training in almost an environment that's a bit like a PlayStation. They enjoy that. They enjoy coming in an environment like this where they've got TrackMan on the screen, they've got Swing Cat playing around with them, because that appeals to who they are, the generation, who they are. So I think people have got to tool up if you want to keep up in this business as a coach, for sure.
Right. And I think I've seen some people that, allow students to train on the swing catalyst without them even there. But like once you know, hey, all you got to do is mess with your swing and get more of that yellow graph. So all they have is the view where they can only see the yellow graph, and they play with stuff. Oh, it went down on that one. Oh, it went up on that one. So you get some immediate feedback. And to me, when you get it right, and like we just talked about with you, like the yellow graph started to go up, and your speed started to go up, and so all of those things are like, wow, okay, we're on the right track there. And so that's that to me is where you're getting immediate feedback on how your mechanics are changing, and then how that then affects ball flight. And the cool part is that all the ball flight information is imported right into the SwingCat software. So I remember in the past going to facilities where they had their launch monitor data on this iPad, and they had their video on this computer, and they had their whatever it was thing they were working with, their K-Vest on this computer, and then how do you know which swing went with which ones, and it gets all confusing. And so yeah, having it all in the same package, I think is super
yeah. And for my style of teaching with this technology, I'm very much guided by the numbers from TrackMan, and that forms a lot of the mosaic to me. It's like, okay, well, TrackMan's saying this, the pass doing that, speed's doing this, the angle of attack's doing that, and then you feed that into, okay, well, that's because that torque went a little early there, or the vertical force a little late there, and you tie them in together, and it's very logical. It kind of makes sense and fits together as a result. And there's nothing more enjoyable, I don't think, than giving someone one piece of information or two little tiny pieces of information and changing the data across the board. It's very satisfying, I must say.
Definitely. And I think that's the cool part is a lot of people, obviously the launch monitor tells you what happened, but it doesn't tell you why it happened, right? If the path is way left and the face is way open and the whatever it is, the angle of attack is whatever it is, that happened, but why did it happen that way? And I think the SwingCat starts to give you some ideas in terms of what forces went into that system that created that outcome or that result. And so, I think there's so many times where, I wouldn't have a chance of helping anyone with their golf swings without a SwingCat. It's just that, both of us have learned a lot from Mike Adams, and, I think I can do some things that are pretty close to what Mike Adams does. I mean, never the same, because obviously he's been teaching this game forever, but I have a chance of doing something similar to what he does with the play. Without the plate, I got no chance. Right. And it's because, we've done so much work on kind of quantifying what's in his brain and putting it on a screen where I can see it, whereas he can probably see it, but again, I think there's still some times where even him being the guru of golf instruction, he has a SwingCat, right? He uses it in every lesson. So that's probably the reason why he can see some things there that he might not see with his eye and might go down the wrong path because of it.
Yeah, and I think, he's so experienced, like you're saying, he's got a very inquisitive mind, a very open mind, which I think you've got to have, embrace technology and don't be scared of it. And also, you combine the science with the art. At the end of the day, the teacher side of it, which is the part I represent, we're like the filter to filter the science into the art, and that's the bit that Mike's so good at and you're good at, and I try and get good at as well. Keep it as simple as possible to change as much data as possible is really what it's all about. So you end up being the conduit, the filter, because if you use technology poorly, you just get people too technical. If you use it intelligently, you get them less technical, because they know what field creates what. So they stop guessing, they stop searching. And the technology, if it used wisely, really makes the game simpler for people, believe it or not.
No, totally. And I like your idea, where you have the technology and you hit 2 or 3 shots on the technology to get the feel, and then you go off of it and you go hit balls elsewhere. And to me, calibrating your feels on the SwingCat. And that's where, I've done a lot of work with the motor learning scientist, Will Wu, who works a lot with John Dunnigan. And he says the people who use the technology really well use it sparingly with with each subject or with each player, right? So you get them on there, figure out what their ingredients are, you get their feels, and then you get them off of it. Because obviously, on the first tee the next day, there's not going to be your torque graph and your path showing up right after you hit it, right? You gotta have those feels for yourself.
And even with technology like TrackMan as well, with players, I really have very few tiles on quite often. If I've got to focus on just 2 things, okay, I really want you to focus on your angle of attack and your dynamic loft. Mm-hmm. They're the only 2 tiles I'm looking at. And same with SwingCat, you can really narrow it down. It's okay, this is what you need to look at. This graph, just ramp this up as much as you can. Mm-hmm. So again, you're just intelligent use of it, and you've just got to get some experience on it, understand it, don't be afraid of it, be open-minded, be vulnerable to the fact you don't know it all. I'm still learning about it, and that's part of being a teacher. Teach, never cease to learn. So I think it's very important.
That's awesome. So let's start with you have some case studies behind you there. So why don't we start
Yeah.
with show us like some pre-posts. We'll dig into your swing later, but let's show us some of these kids you got first.
Yeah. So this kid is he's got obviously low magnitude vertical force. When I always look at the pressure trace to start with, and when it's like all over the place like that, it's always a sign that something's going on. And then you look at his low magnitude vertical force, and then you feed that into the look of it. So when you look at his swing here, he looks on a little bit on his toes. His pressure's a little bit on his toes. His arms are kind of too attached to his ribs. And as a result of that, he's got quite a funky little look here as he goes back. Let me just get this over here. You can see tightens his arms up, and then the club gets in, and then very lifted. You can see there's a really slow movement of his pressure. It's quite centered, and then kind of hangs around for too long. We don't see a lot of really good players where their centers, their pressure hangs around. They recenter very quickly, most players. By the time lead arms around here, they're starting to recenter. So again, that's a red flag. It's like, okay, this guy's not recentering. And then all of a sudden he kind of recenters as he steepens the downswing. So you can see the shafts, through his neck. Upper torso is unwound early. Now he's in trouble. So I see that with a lot of kids who unwind early. They get jammed on the toes. They get what I call a fake vertical force. So if you look at his vertical force, it's spiking out, but it's spiking out really early. Mm-hmm. And it's just totally fake. It's faked because he's spun and got on his toes and started to early extend. Because of that, he's trying to change the course of the club at this point. And now from here, obviously, he has to kind of get underneath it and redirect the club, hit it all over the place, really slow as well. So we just tweaked it here. You can see much better magnitude vertical force, much later vertical force, got him stood better. Got the start better, got it on a better track, got his body to wind up better. So he's got a much cleaner look about it, and also a better kinetic linkage to what he's doing. The arms are shorter, they're wider, they're tighter. It's all kind of linked into his trunk a little bit more. And you can see, he's going to change direction a little bit earlier as well and push down into the ground a little bit better. So as a result, he's got obviously the plane and the geometry, which is a factor in this particular swing, is totally different. You can see how steep it is here. It's through his neck. This one here, it's underneath his trail shoulder. The pressure's moving better. There's more pressure in his lead foot. The whole foot's lit up, not just his toe. So he's made a much better pressure shift. As a result, he's got the club in a shallower slot. And then from there, he's not going to have to redirect it. And as soon as he's not redirected it, all of a sudden, the club goes back round the corner faster, and he's got more speed. So, I think in these swings, I think his speed jumped up 7 or 8 miles an hour. And this is just 2 days apart, 1 hour here, 1 hour here. So,
that's awesome.
Again, it gives you an idea, and you can see the change in his verticals. Look, much more magnitude at a much better spot. Not perfect, you want to be getting the maximum verticals kind of about here. It's gone a little early, but better. We're not trying to make it perfect, but it's definitely better. He's got more maximum weight, 165, and the pressure and what have you is shifted way better into his lead foot. So there's an example of improving geometry, improving physics, and also improving stuff that you actually can't see and being able to quantify it. So obviously the kid left with a thing about it. It's just a simple little drill. Obviously, he worked on his posture and just getting the club to rotate and set a little bit better. Then he worked on just stepping into the shot, stepping out drill a little earlier, just to start shifting that pressure and that mass a little earlier, which obviously glued his swing together, got the plane better, etc. So he left with 1 drill, 2 thoughts. But when you start looking into it in detail, we could look at a lot of the other forces if we had time.
Right.
They all changed. They all changed and improved, but you don't need to delve into it. It's just like, okay, there's your 2 thoughts. Here's what's changed that's really important. Go and get on with it, and I'll see you next time.
Right. And I really like how you use the pressure mapping to see like what part of the foot is in touch with the ground. Because like you say, all vertical forces are not created equal, right? And if he gets one where more of his foot is on the ground and he's using where when he gets stuck on his toes there and he's trying to kind of salvage it. I mean, I think that's a rescue vertical force, right? He's just trying to save it and I think having the pressure and the forces in the same on the same person is really useful, because if we didn't have the pressure mapping, you would just see where the center of pressure is and you wouldn't know if it was his toe or his heel or what it was, right? So being able to see the pressure along with the forces, I think, is super important. And I really like that, because then you can see how he's pushing. And is it like a well-timed vertical force that's allowing him to speed up the club, or is he just trying to save it from that super steep position? Like when you're in your neck plane, it was the vertical force just to try to shallow it a little bit and save it coming down.
100% it is, totally.
That's awesome. Really good. Okay, let's see who's next here. I think we have some people that were having trouble with their videos, but I think some people are saying if you log out and log back in, or if you hit refresh on your browser in the settings tab, it may help. So we apologize for the difficulties here, but this is our first time using this thing, just like all you guys are. So hopefully you can see the video now, because Jonathan's got some really good stuff going on here. It is being recorded though, so Tim, I'm sure we'll be able to get it to people that if you do miss some stuff and there's stuff that you're hearing through the audio that you can't see video for, just what do you want us to do? Email tim@swingcatalyst.com and we'll get you the file afterwards so that you can look through it later. But thank you so much for joining us. We've got quite a few people on here. And again, if you have any questions for Jonathan or for Tim or for myself, please type them into the chat box there, and we will get an answer for you. All right, Jonathan, who do we got here?
So this is some long-term athletic development. These are 3 months apart. I pride myself on being able to change swings very quickly, factually and evidentially within a few minutes of everyone I work with. But this is an example of long-term athletic development. She's obviously got stronger in the gym with the gym team that we've got here, and that's enabled her to improve her swing really significantly. And we've talked offline here, Scott, about, this technology is not about making every single force perfect and maxing out every single force. It's about tuning the forces for each individual to get more out of what they do. And for me, it's a combination of sometimes what it looks like, sometimes obviously what the TrackMan's saying, and then kind of feeding that all into which forces I think would tune up best for this particular student. I know you've done some great research with Mike Adams on leg dominance and stuff like that, which is another factor. Loads of things go into it. But here's a case of, just a gentle improvement in where a torque force is, gentle improvement in a pressure mapping, but a massive improvement when you look at it from a geometry perspective. So her original swing has got pretty much everything I don't like in a golf swing in one swing, really. There's a big move off the ball. I see a lot of people doing this where they get very early turned. They get the trail arm too straight and they get their trail side early turned, which obviously creates too much thoracic spine turn for my liking. The arm swing goes too far back. There's just too much going on. So everything gets very centered with the pressure. There's no kind of lateral, horizontal movement. So it's just an old-fashioned turn, that to me, which doesn't create any torque, any power, any speed. So her speed in this one was 68 miles an hour with a 7-iron.
Oh, wow.
I think we got up to 83 with this one, with a bit of playing around. And you can see, because it's early turned, it's overturned, and then, she drifts ahead of it. So then she just unwinds really early, just spins from the top effectively. And you see how that club's late, the arms are late, the club's early releasing, high dynamic lofts, so swing speed, etc. So just a messy, old-fashioned swing, that to me, and really not a lot that I like about it in that swing at all. That's something from 1965, I think. So we talked about, getting the sequence better. I spend a lot of time on getting the sequence of events right. So the clubs goes at a certain speed, the arms next, the body next, and trying to create torque and direction change that gives it a nice tight look. Not an over-resisted look, just a nice tight look. So if you look at a new one here, obviously she's stronger, as I just alluded to, but you can see her right side's not moved as much, a trail shoulder's not overturned as much. Her arms are on the journey, the club's loaded, her body just looks more torqued, her trail side looks more resisted. And then you can see how her lower body now winds up. So she's effectively got less turn, but plenty of it, with a shorter, wider arm swing. And if you look at her legs, how much stronger her legs look, they've still moved, but her core looks more engaged. It looks much more pressure inside it when you look at it. But I like the shorter, wider look. So when she changes direction, the arms come down faster, they're more with her, the lag is retained because, the arms are getting faster in front of her because there's less slack in her swing effectively. And as a result of that, she can get her hands more ahead as she hits it. She can get a lead wrist inflection. So she's lowered the dynamic loft, the torque she's created, the torque increase she's created, and the pressure improvement she's created. gives them some more speed. So the combination of more speed, more torque, and lower dynamic loft, like I say, she's gone from 68 miles an hour here to 83 when we have sessions on forces, we have sessions on geometry, and then we just have speed sessions.
Right.
So once I got her swinging like this, I said, right, now we're going to add some juice to this thing. And we literally had half an hour in TrackMan, and she was panting at the end of it. But we got it up to 83. So I try and kind of teach a little bit like that with long-term people. It's like, okay, a little bit of geometry work, a little bit of how it fits together work, a little bit of force work, and a little bit of speed work. And, you know, you kind of rotate around that. But again, evidential, she's all over it. It's dead simple. She owns that swing. That's 3 months work there. And, you know, she's a lovely little player as a result. Obviously,
great.
Short.
Can you take it back to the top, the one on the right? Can you take it back to the top as well?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so what I'm seeing here, which I think is really interesting, is she's really crossed up in knots on the left, because a straightened trail leg tells me she's a very front-sided dominant player, or Mike, I don't know to say a left post. Like a left post would want to straighten that back leg and get the pelvis tilted downhill, and but then that lead knee collapsing towards the trail knee is a very trail side dominant post. So she's collapsing that knee into the trail side, which is a trail dominant kind of move, but then she's straightening that back leg and can't push off of it. So she's crossed herself up in knots and has no chance from there. And so you'll see she's limited the amount of knee collapse, and she's increased the amount of trail knee flexion, right? So you've developed a more centered approach to her, which is going to add torque 100%. And so you've taken her from a mismatch, right? Her lead side is trail post, and her trail side is lead post, and that it just creates a big mismatch that she's got no chance from. So some really cool changes there. I like that a lot. You've given her the ability to push off her trail leg by giving it a little bit more flexion. It looks like it's not hyperextended like in the left side. And then you've given her a little less knee collapse. So that's all a centered style swing. You can see the torque has gone up.
Yeah, and I like the way swing is a lot short and wide. For a lot of players, that's a good thing to do for an iron, maybe not so much for a wood. And maybe we could talk a little bit about wood and iron swings, because since I've had the swing cap, I literally teach two different swings now. I didn't used to, but I do now. I teach a power Z pressure trace, which is what we'll see with Cambo here in a minute. But with an iron, it's more about accuracy and precision for me. So I teach a more precise kind of look for an iron, and a more aggressive, zipper with the driver. So maybe we'll come on to that. But cool. Nice short, tight little arm swing, sequence body motion, so the arms react on the way down with decent speed, which is a common trait we see of all great swings. There's an early pressure shift, but there's also some arm speed from the top. The arms at the top are going about 3 miles an hour. And by the time lead arms parallel, they're going 25 miles an hour. So they're accelerating 22 miles an hour from the top to lead arm parallel with a lot of players. And it's like what I call the magic move. And then from lead arm parallel to, just beyond that, they only accelerate another 3 or 4 miles an hour. So that little section there is where they're going like a rocket, and people don't understand that. And they teach people to keep their left arm pinned to their chest and stuff like that, which we don't see with the elite players. We see a slow moving lead shoulder and a really fast lead arm from the top.
That's awesome. Really good stuff there. And I really like what you've done with her lower body pivot. I mean, everything you've done there has taken away her kind of crossed up lower body there and allowed her to create more torque. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, I've said this in the past, that I don't think I've seen a player add or a coach add torque to somebody's swing and have it result in bad things. Again, this is inherently a rotational game, and adding some of that yellow graph to somebody's swing, I think is I've yet to see it be a bad thing. Adding more horizontal and adding more vertical definitely could be a bad thing at some point, but no, that was really good. All right, now we're going to move on to your own swing here, it looks like.
Yep.
Scott, there was a question.
There was a question, apparently, Scott.
How do you make those changes? Sorry, which changes do you mean, David? Which changes are you talking about? The ones that Jonathan made? I mean, you can talk about how you made those changes, Jonathan. What are the before and after? Okay, so I mean, talk a little bit about how you made those changes with that girl.
Like my process, as I said, with every player is to show a before and after within 3 or 4 minutes. Improvement, definitely. It takes a little bit of skill, because obviously you've got to watch a lot of swings, you've got to do it fast, and it takes a little bit of guts as well, actually, to put yourself on the line, because you've got, whatever you tell them to do, it's got to look better quickly, but also the TrackMan numbers have got to tally, and the force numbers have got to tally. So you better know what you're doing when you start messing around with that sort of technology. But my process, it's just a case-by-case basis, really. It totally varies with the person. I get to know them, get to feel what they're about. But I never give anyone more than one bit of information back and one bit of information through. That's my golden rule. If it's any more than that, I'm doing it wrong. And what I generally do is, go through the data, create a solution in my head, and then I have a drill or two to propagate the moves that I want. Then we refilm it, and then we look at the TrackMan, and it's usually had a positive impact quite quickly as well.
What were the two things that you had her working on? Like, what were the two things do you remember that created that change? That
I got a feeling she didn't turn her right shoulder or her right hip on the way back. She just felt like she loaded the club and got her left arm to jam across her chest. Once she felt that, she shifted more laterally without unwinding herself. She had to keep her right hip down in transition. So her mantra was, keep my right shoulder looking at the ball, keep my right hip down in transition. That was a main mantra, and we just stuck with that for quite a long time, actually, because she's such a spinner. We didn't go into that much detail, but she was such a spinner. Her pressure trace went backwards like you've never seen when she first came. As I say, that old-fashioned style of swing, turn and turn. The swings turn and turn. No, it's not.
That's really good. I really like that. Keep the right hip down in transition, because that will keep her a little more flex in her trail side knee, which I think to me makes her a more centered style swinger. So yeah, that was really good. I mean, I think that's really accomplished what you wanted to do there.
So I've got my swing up here, Scott, and maybe you could run with this one. Really, I think it's important that people know, my swing, for whatever reason, I'm just fortunate. It's got what's called a unicorn pressure map, where it's in high magnitude. All this black area is at high magnitude in good sequence as well. When that one's peaking and trailing off, this one peaks and trails off, then that one takes over. And just to give you some of the reference points and some of the points that I use in my teaching, for a lot of, not for everyone, but for a lot of players, I'm looking for the change of direction by the time the arms are kind of coming, just starting down or going up, around that sort of area. And then lead arm parallel, I'm looking for maximum torque force, which you can see it's dead on there. And then club parallel, I'm looking for maximum verticals. So that's a very good sequence. But the reason I want to get it up there is so that Scott can maybe talk to you about, it's not about a perfect sequence. I mean, I can't hit it past my shadow. It's not about that. It's about tuning it up for each individual, right? And you might need torque for one, more horizontal for the other. So take that away and your experience of that, Scott.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing here in this swing, and we got a couple of questions here we'll address right after we do this, but I like to see a good matchup between your pressure shift and your dominant ground reaction force pattern. So if you can see, the blue one gets the highest, right? It's at the top of the tour average, where the other two just kind of sneak into the bottom of the tour average. And so it looks to me like your dominant ground reaction force pattern here is vertical. And that would match a much more front style or a much more left-sided pressure shift, which would be, I always look at the maximum right pressure into the trail side. And that would be in like the 70% range. And you can see yours gets up into the 80% range, which is more of a centered type pivot. And so to me, where we can gain the most from and you told me you like a centered feel, right? That's something that really works well for you. And so that's what we were doing before. If any of you were online before we logged in, to me, the only graph I would want to put up there as Jonathan's working on his swing is the yellow graph. And we got to do whatever we can to make that thing go up. Because Tim gave him a little drill with the bands as we were logging on here, and we got that graph up slightly, and your speed went up 2 or 3 miles an hour. So that tells me we're on the right track.
Can we show people that drill? Because I think that's quite interesting.
Let's show it. Tim, if you want to hop up there, this is my reactive neuromuscular training drill. Once we show this drill, I'll ask you a couple questions here, Jonathan, because we had a couple come in.
Yeah, I use a lot of this style of drill, just to let you know. Oh, you got it? Okay. I use a lot of this style of drill, opposite resistance stuff. It's really good.
Opposite resistance, we call it reactive neuromuscular training. You can call it whatever you want. So you put the club behind your thighs there. There you go. And so you got to remember that to create torque, that lead foot actually tries to push towards Tim. And so he's going to try to push that foot towards Tim and stretch that band and come backwards. Good. And important too with the torque, I love the way Tim is giving the resistance here. the torque, as Jonathan talked about, should happen about left arm parallel on the way down. So you want to give him resistance there and let him produce that torque, and then drop the band off and let him turn. So you want to get the force off the ground, but if you hold the resistance the whole time, he's producing torque way too long and way too late. So you let him produce it and then drop the band off and let him spin. And so that gets that hip a little more open, gets you using your hips a little better, which I really like. All right, that's awesome. So let's go to Andrew's question here. So you talked about, the old style swing that one girl you had showed us. Does that coincide with Sam Snead and Henry Cotton? Is that what you're talking about there? I don't know who Henry Cotton is. Never heard of them.
No, what I was referring to, I mean, Henry Cotton, listen, anyone who's a great player in any era, they cottoned onto something, I can assure you. That's why they're a great player. Peter Thompson has got one of the best golf swings of all time, which will stack up against anything. And most of the greats would. Sam Snead has got enormous torque force, enormous vertical force. You can learn something from all of that. And I wasn't trying to critique that at all. I've got massive respect. I spend a lot of time studying a lot of those old swings because you can learn something from all of them. I'll tell you now, it doesn't happen by magic. It happens by physics. So it's quite interesting looking at it with an educated eye, really, and an inquisitive eye. But what I was referring to, I think, especially in Asia, where coaching is quite embryonic, where obviously this girl was from, there's a lot of old-fashioned stuff in actual coaching, I think, that gets banded around that's not been examined. So the doctrine of, okay, turn. Everyone's get told to turn. You go, to Thailand or wherever. Oh yeah, turn. So you've got all these people who are early turn, no torque, no sequence, just flapping around, not creating any energy at all. Based on a really old-fashioned doctrine that it doesn't actually work like that. As you know, there's a sequence to the turn, there's a sequence to the arms to match it, there's a sequence to the pressure movement, so I was referencing that really. I wasn't critiquing an old-fashioned swing, as it were. I think, you can learn something from all those guys. There's no question about that, and you should learn something from all of them as well. No,
definitely. That's a really good answer. We also have a question here. When dealing with children of different ages, would you approach the use of the swing catalyst differently? So if you're working with a 7-year-old versus a 15-year-old, or...
Yeah, you would. You just make it more fun is what I do. I just make it more fun. Do a lot of for example, I had a kid on there not long ago, a really young kid. I said, right, no one's ever had a pressure trace for doing the floss. Let's have a floss pressure trace. So they're on the swing cat, literally doing the floss.
Are you going to show us that, Jonathan?
I filmed it. I've got it somewhere. I'll find it somewhere.
No, I want to see your floss.
I'll see. No, I can't do it. No, it's on there somewhere. But so that's an example. Okay, do the floss. Okay, now let's hit a shot. Okay, geez, you look at that yellow line doing that, and make it do that more in your swing. So you alter the vocab, you alter the fun factor. And you lower your expectations as well. You don't get too carried away with it. Because young kids particularly, their bodies are developing. Their swing's going to change 3,000 times. So you just go with the flow a little bit. Don't get too serious with it. I don't. I have fun with it. I get them comfortable and liking it. We play games on the TrackMan. All that sort of stuff really. And I really focus a lot on the short game with kids more than anything, and just let their swing come and go a little bit. But I'm not a big believer in the let them smash it and don't worry about anything and hit it as hard as they can doctrines. For me personally, I try and have speed sessions, but I also have sessions where we try and get some semblance of a golf swing, because I want to hit it straight as well. And what I don't want them to do is, when they're 14, 15, to have to rebuild their golf swing because it's so bad. So I try and, hand in hand, work on speed and work on a little bit of semblance of geometry as well.
Yeah, that's good. Paul had a question. He said it would be really interesting to look at your 3D pelvis lift graph to see how your pelvis rises throughout the swing. And Paul, for a teaser, that may be possible in Swing Catalyst very soon, to see that all synchronized with the ground reaction forces, or it will be possible very soon. Not maybe, it will be possible very soon in the Swing Catalyst software. So please stay in touch with us for that. That's going to be coming very soon.
Maybe it's a good moment, maybe for Tim to talk a little bit about the dual system that's coming out, dual play system.
Sure.
Because that's going to be a game changer as well, I think.
Yeah, I don't think my mic.
Oh, is your mic not on? Okay. Well, big picture is there's going to be a dual play system coming out soon, which has just started to come out in Europe, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Which will already make this amazing technology even better.
Yeah.
It's It'd be very interesting to see.
And the dual plate, the dual plate is going to be great. I agree. But one of the things I'm super excited about to go along with the dual plate, and it'll work for your single plate too, is a markerless motion capture system that is coming very soon in Swing Catalyst. So you will be able to get simple kinematic measures like pelvic lift. That will be something that will be possible. Center of mass calculations will be possible. All of these things. So that's what I'm super excited about, to get that in there with the dual plates. It'll work with your single plate as well. So, Jason, I thought you knew that. Weren't you on our ambassador meeting? Or did you skip that one? Anyways, another question here, a really good question. Where was it? George asked, you mentioned Mike Adams' left post, center post, and right post. Does foot pressure and COP trace vary depending on how you pivot? And I would say yes, 100%. A right post player is going to have a much longer center of pressure trace, so they're going to get much more into their trail side. So I would consider like 85, 90, 95% pressure shift into the trail side, a very right posted swing. And obviously that needs to come with a lot of horizontal force to get you back to your left side. A center posted pressure shift, which what Jonathan has there, is about 80% into the trail side. And then a very left posted pressure shift would be less than, around 70, even less than that sometimes. So coordinating your pressure shift to your dominant ground reaction force pattern, I think, is one of the easiest changes you can make in Swing Catalyst. And that's something that, you'll see people get way off, where their dominant pressure shift is vertical, or their dominant ground reaction force is vertical, and they're getting like 90% into their trail side. That vertical is just trying to save it, right? They're not getting back, and they're probably weak on their right side. And that's where I think you can look at a lot of things to see, kinematically, to see what their post is. A straightened left leg, or a straightened trail side leg or right leg for a right-handed player would be a very left posted move. And if you keep some flex in your right leg, you're going to be a more trail side dominant player. And then you want to watch the lead knee too. As the lead knee collapses more towards the trail side, that's more of a trail side dominant swing. And if the lead knee kind of stays stacked and just bends on top of the left foot, that'll be more of a left dominant post style. So you saw that one girl had them both going. She had a trail dominant right leg and a lead dominant trail leg and a trail dominant lead leg, and she was just crossing herself up in knots. And you worked on it with that one cue, right? Keep your right hip higher in transition, and that one thing accomplished all those goals, which I think is really cool.
And we do have Mike Adams on tomorrow.
Oh yeah, and we do have Mike Adams on tomorrow, so you can ask him that question yourself. He'll have probably a much more eloquent answer than I had there.
I'm just the warm up. I'm the warm up act. The real stuff's coming tomorrow.
So Paul had a question here. What drills would you do, or measurements do you use to find a student's post? So I like to do the drill or the measurement where you hit with your feet together, then one foot back and the other foot back, like we did in that webinar for the section last week. You can also hit from different parts of the motion plate, the 3D motion plate. That's one of our torque determinants of what your dominant leg is for torque. I know I was talking to Kevin Sprecher earlier today, and he uses that, or yesterday, I guess it was when I was talking to him. He uses that drill. I know Ben Shear does a bunch of vertical force, like jumping drills on the force plate, where you can see what foot produces more vertical force. So there's lots of different tests you can do, and all of those are going to give you a better idea of how to guide the swing better towards the individual standing in front of you. All right, Paul has a question. I'll put this one over to you, Jonathan. How much does the heel to toe force direction, or I guess it would be pressure shift direction, right, where the line is going, the center of pressure, in transition, contribute to the pelvis opening up by impact? What do you think?
Again, case by case basis. If you've got a center poster who wants to spin, that thing's going to go like that early. A lot of people who I quite like people getting that thing pointing a little bit to the right initially in transition, getting almost a fish hook kind of pressure trace for some people, because again, something people don't really talk about, but if you actually keep your ribs and your upper torso and your guts and your head over your lead leg, and you kind of go a little bit diagonal in transition, initially, that bar is going to go to the right, but you're going to massively increase your downforce by putting that heavy load into that front foot. And then obviously that will encourage you to have to spin out of the way really fast. So again, it's a case-by-case basis. I can never really answer a question saying, yes, this happens and this, it literally is a case-by-case basis. But for some people who are spinners, you want to see that thing going early. For some people who are a bit more horizontal and torquey, you want to see it going a bit more diagonally. And that's why you've got to have a knowledge of different pressure traces. The Sydney Harbour Bridge pressure trace, there's a fishhook pressure trace, there's a linear into the heel pressure trace. And there's even variants on that. I mean, I know, Scott, you can probably attest to this, that, Justin Rose, who's got one of these in his house, if he jumps off his heel, he gets less speed than when he jumps off the middle of his foot. So you can start to get into that degree of precision, really, especially when you're working with an incredible athlete like that.
Yeah, and I think you can get in trouble just looking at pressure traces, right? Because it doesn't tell you about the gas. The pressure trace gives you an idea of where your pressure is moving, and it can give you an idea of why they are or not producing the forces that they are or not producing. But it's actually the forces, not the pressures, that cause the club to move and cause the body to move. And so I think that's why it's really cool to have the combination of the two of them, right? To be able to see the ground reaction forces. Okay, what kind of forces are they putting into this system? Then you can look at the pressure trace to see, okay, I understand in Justin Rose why he's not producing a lot of vertical force, because he's spinning into his heel really quick. Okay, let's get him to stay in the ball of his foot, and that'll allow him to produce more. So I think it's the combination of the two that really gives you the gold of what's happening. And so that was a really good answer. We have a question here. Michael says he sees a lot of good junior players with a Z trace in almost all clubs, with a lot of hang back and with the head in the upper body. Any drills to get the upper body to catch up, or is it a case of slowing down the force spin out of the lower body in the downswing, and that he thinks that might sacrifice power? What's your thoughts on that, Jonathan?
Well, you've got to give them some slack, because they do it because they're just not strong enough in their glutes, the legs, and their abs to stabilize the pelvis, really. So you could do some cells of geometry work where you just say, right, okay, we're just going to slow things down right now. We're not going to look too much at the forces. We're going to make sure you keep your butt back. We're going to make sure your upper torso goes forward. So exercises that I do that help that would be a Swiss ball in a chair behind the player, and they've got to push into the Swiss ball to start to get their mass going backwards rather than forwards, stop the early extension. Putting an alignment stick or a floaty. I use a lot of swimming pool floaties on alignment sticks to do all sorts of stuff. And physical barriers really help everybody, in my view. So I put one opposite their trail ear and get them to move off the floaty as they push their butt into the Swiss ball. That all helps kind of get the mass and the pressure moving in the right direction, keeps their centers over each other, which is a very important thing. Again, something I've learned. I study AMG golf, which I think is a really good thing to look at. And, they talk a lot about, both centers, the upper torso and the lower body staying on top of each other in transition to improve the ground reaction force, the pressure that's going to be pushed back. And they don't separate till much later than you think, those things. So, there would be two primary ones, little floaty at the side of the ear and a Swiss ball behind them. And again, it's fun. They look at that and go, geez, I can't wait to go and do that drill. I'm going to be on the range with a Swiss ball and a floaty, and my mates are going to think I'm cool. So you got to make it fun for them as well. And so they're going to want to do it. And then you just add some juice in that and try and get them to keep the look that you're trying to get as they add juice. So, you might get them practicing in what I call first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, and then you move them into sixth gear, then go back down the cycle. So that's kind of what I would do. That's
awesome. Really good answer there. Frank Scott has a question. What are your views on stack and tilt? He put stock and tilt, but I think you mean stack. I think, it's a really lead leg dominant style of swing, which could be okay. If you have a older gentleman or a person that has a really not well functioning right leg. So I was just doing a camp with Tony Ruggiero in Sea Island, Georgia last weekend, and we had a guy who had a right hip replacement, and so his right leg didn't work so well. He had that hip replaced, and obviously there's been a bunch of trauma. I'm sure, if you have pain in your right side, you're going to shut down a lot of the muscles around your right hip for a really long period of time. And this guy's probably not going to go to the gym and work on that and get that right side strong again. So having him stacked up on his lead side is probably not a bad idea. And so the stack, I don't really like the tilt part though. I like stack and launch, so they get stacked on that lead side and they got to use their vertical force from there. So it can be a really good pattern for some people. For some people, it could be the worst thing in the world. So, and that's true of anything. I think there's any golf tip, any golf theory you can think of could be the absolute best thing in the world for one person and the worst thing in the world for somebody else. And maybe medium for somebody else, right? So and I think that's what Jonathan talked about is putting the right ingredients into the right person and looking at the individual. That's really important. What are your thoughts on that, Jonathan?
I think anytime you've got a method, you're going to have, let's say a sample of 10 people doing a method, you're going to have 5 that you help and 5 that you don't help, most likely. And so, that's why you've got to have more of a kind of open mind, more of a larger palette of information and swing styles. I teach stack and tilt to some people, front posters. I teach horizontal. I teach, lead wrist inflection. I teach lead wrist and extension. I teach 2-plane, 1-plane. You got to have a knowledge of all these things so you can help the majority of people. That's what you're there for. And you can't, in my teaching, I don't put people into a mold or into a cookie cutter. I think it's quite a lazy way to teach, in my view. It doesn't take much enough figuring out, really. For me, I like being a detective. I like trying to get the most out of each individual, really. But again, it's got merit, as Scott said. It has to have merit. And I think when you first try it, it feels great, especially with a short iron, because you're on your left side, the attack's going 7 down, all of a sudden you just munch one out there, and it gets quite addictive. But that strong angle of attack down makes it hard to hit a wood, obviously, for a lot of players, not for all, but for a lot of players. But the players it suits, it looks really good to me. You look at someone like Robert Rock, who's that kind of ilk. I talked to him not long ago, and I said, he's probably the one guy I look at with that style that it suits. Mm-hmm. And he looks good, and you wouldn't see him in any other style. I mean, he looks so good doing it, doesn't he? But, as I say, I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all, not for me personally, and absolutely no criticism of the system that they've got. It's obviously well worked out, well thought out. But I just think, you've got to, be able to accommodate a lot more people, really.
I agree. There's a question here from Joe. Where can Swing Catalyst users get access to the neuromuscular training drills to use in their own coaching? So that's something I go through in our level 2 certification, which is available online. Maybe Tim, do you have the link there? You can maybe throw it in the chat box to our level 2 online certification. That is something that, we used to do our level 2 certifications only in person. So we did one at Jonathan's facility. And it was hard for us to get to all the places, to see all the people. So luckily during the pandemic, we were able to film an online virtual level 2 certification that's now available. So you can do that at any point from anywhere in the world, as long as you have access to the internet. And we do get into different types of reactive neuromuscular training drills for horizontal players, for vertical players, for torque players. You just have a gamut of little drills you can do, and all you really need is a rubber band, right? So any kind of stretchy rubber band, I think, is a really good tool for a coach to have with them. Jonathan, have you come across many players with a very good pressure movement and patterns, but swing the club really poorly and hit the ball badly? Or is the secret really in the dirt?
No, definitely. Because I think the big distinction you've got to make, and the distinction that really helped me that I learned from Scott when I first got into this, there's a big difference between pressure and mass. They're not the same thing. So, you can have a decent looking pressure trace and your mass can be all over the shop. So I look more at the video as well as the pressure trace, as well as the forces to kind of, get a correlation between what's going on, because you can be very deluded and duped a little bit, especially by the pressure trace. Because, this thing could be going linear, you think, oh, that's great. And then you look at the video and his pelvis is disappearing underneath him, but managing to grip the ground okay. And, there's definitely, you've got to really understand the distinction between mass and pressure and keep your eye on both, really.
Exactly. And I don't know what a good pressure trace is. I've studied a lot of them and I'm not sure what it is, because I see some messy pressure traces that equal some unbelievable golf shots, and I see some really pretty pressure traces that equal some awful golf shots. So, and if you look at, Matt Wolf, or you look at Victor Hovland, they got some crazy pressure traces. That thing's going all over the place. And 2 of the best players out there right now, right? 2 young kids that are coming up and playing some really good golf. So I think a pressure trace just gives you information. It's not good, it's bad, it's just what it is. And you got to decide in your head, is it good or is it bad? And do I need to make alterations to it? And I think really looking at the pressure trace in absence of looking at the video or looking at the human and seeing where they are in space. And so that's where our markerless motion tracking is going to really help with that. And then looking at the 3D ground reaction forces. So taking it all in, and then also looking at the launch monitor, right? What's that launch monitor telling you? All of those things got to go into your calculation.
No, I'd agree, and you've got to look at the whole picture as well, because you can fake some of these forces, as we talked about earlier. You know, a lot of kids get a massive vertical force, but it's out of position, so that's your kind of marker. And you can also fake TrackMan. You know, there's ways that people can fake TrackMan. I've seen it many times. So you use a bit of intelligence, a bit of acumen, a bit of experience to kind of blend the whole thing together and use it the most effective you can.
Perfect. Paul, what do you think about that question? Tim, can we get them a discount for people who have taken it already?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So yeah, if you email tim@swingcatalyst.com, Paul, we can set you up with something to retake the online one. If you've already taken it in person, for sure, we'll do that for you. David had a question. Is a straight line trace what you are ultimately looking for with irons? Like a linear trace? What do you think?
No, not really. No, as Scott said earlier, there's a case-by-case basis. If you're a centre poster, it's a Sydney Harbour Bridgie. You know, if you're on your lead leg, you might back up a little bit. You know, it's just case-by-case again. You know, obviously some of the purer swingers, let's say, you know, might have a linear trace, like someone like Justin Rose, for example, who's quite linear. But you've got other people that have got a Z pressure trace, you know, like Hovland and those guys with their irons. Never mind a wood. So again, the pressure trace is only a very small part of the equation, and it can delude you. But again, there's a bit of a distinction between if you are looking at pressure traces alone, a massive distinction between a pressure trace of an iron and a wood, for sure, like enormous. So we might get onto it, might not get time, but I could show you with Michael Campbell here, who was here a while ago, how different the driver pressure trace should be compared to an iron. It's quite remarkable, really.
Right, and I think yeah, we got 8 more minutes, but I think that's something that I mean, I do have a bunch of Justin Rose swings, and when he hits a 9-iron and he's just trying to punch it, he does have a linear center of pressure trace. But like when he's trying to smash his driver or hit a full speed shot with another club, it actually isn't linear at all. So I think that's something that you have to you know, take into account. And I hate ever making bold statements like that. So when you say, do iron swings, are they supposed to be a linear center pressure trace? Because you're going to find somebody who pures their irons and doesn't have that. So again, there's no good, there's no bad, there's no what it should look like. It's what it should look like for that human. That's super important. So look at Michael, he's got his hat on backwards. He's ready to go here.
These are the sessions I love with tour players, you know, when we're just chilling out, we're relaxed, we're working on it, you know, it's very intimate, you know, become like really good friends to you. And I really enjoy this process. And quite often I don't post stuff on social of what I'm doing with players. I don't even broadcast who I'm working with very much, actually, because I quite like it being private. You know, I already post too much as it is, but I quite like the fact it's quite an intimate thing. So if you look at someone like Cambo, you know, he's obviously getting old now. He's only playing on the senior tour, but he's always been traditionally coached to keep his lead foot on the ground and keep his lead knee bent. That is how he was coached, which gave him quite a severe angle of attack down, which has always made his driver not particularly good. When I've got some TrackMan numbers where he's hitting his driver 264 yards with a 4.7 down angle of attack.
Oy.
So that thing's spinning like a Jessie, and I could hit it further. My mother could hit it further than he was hitting it that day, I can tell you. So I got his path to the right. I think we got it to 0.3 to the right. We got the angle of attack 3 points up, and his speed jumped up the scale, and he flew at 309, I think, from 267. And we incorporated this new move here just from using swing cat, just messing around. I know Phil Mickelson's doing a similar thing with the TPI boys. We were doing this a couple of years ago, just messing around, just trying to get his lead side as extended as possible, trying to get his lead leg to come off the ground, his lead foot to come off the ground. We wanted to have no contact with the ground as he hit it, and we wanted him to lose his balance on the way back, like that. And he's never done that in his life. And that's such a new move, again, from using technology, having an open mind. And that's how he got the angle of attack to go up, and how he got some more juice out of the thing, just using this. You know, just a totally new move. I wouldn't have had the confidence as a coach to get him to do something so radical as that, unless I'd have been backed up by the technology that I use and the TrackMan that I use, because I've coached him for 15 years and I've never ever even talked about that in my career with him. So it was amazing. That was a big eye opener, really. Yeah,
and I think that's something that we'll talk about when we get to Mark Crossfield's going to be on here on Friday, and he said traditionally when he had been working on his swing throughout his life, he'd been trying to limit motion, right, trying to keep things still and not move things, and And now he's doing the opposite. That he's got his ground reaction force plate. He's trying to create bigger motions and let those feet move around and do whatever it needs to do, because he realizes that creates more force on the ground, creates more speed of the club, and creates a lot of good things. So yeah, I think that the technology kind of gives you a license to try some things that maybe you wouldn't previously. So yeah, I think that's really cool. Has he put that swing into play? Does he actually jump at it?
Yeah, he did. In the end, we had to calm it down because he was doing it so much. It was ridiculous. Like Phil, when you watch Phil when he'd been doing it with the TPI guys, he was, all over the place, and so we had to calm it down in the end and keep him planted for a while. And but he's still got tons of extension and vertical, so he's hitting it miles. So he was quite happy, but got him to stay a little bit more in balance in the end, really.
Yeah. So we had a question here. Are you measuring other sports on Swing Catalyst? So yeah, I mean, Swing Catalyst started with ski jumping in Norway, and now we're doing baseball. What else do you have going there, Tim? I know you had a couple other things happening.
No, it's just baseball, ski jumping, golf, and then motion paddles with like CrossFit.
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, so we do have an offshoot company starting out called Motion Catalyst, where we're going to be using it in gyms and in clinics and for basic human being assessment for general movement patterns and all that kind of stuff. So we have a lot of Ben Shear's helping us quite a bit with that. He's a physical trainer, so he wants to use it not just for golf swings, but he wants to use it for assessing humans in any kind of strength and conditioning setting. Oh, here comes Tim.
There was another question about Body Track. You used to own Body Track. So what was the differences between Body Track and Swing? In your opinion?
Well, the difference between the two, I mean, obviously price is number one, but no, it's just not precise enough, really. It's a great little tool. Don't want to disparage anything out there. It's a great little tool. There's no question about it. It's just not precise, and to get the forces and stuff out of it, it's too soft and spongy, I found, and you couldn't get proper readings out of it. I think it's fine just for pressure traces and stuff like that. I think it works okay. But I don't think it's a precise enough piece of equipment to look in detail at what we've got here. I think there's a little bit of guesswork involved. Again, not disparaging it, if that's your price point, and you can definitely still get something out of it. There's no question about it. But this is like Rolls Royce really compared.
And then as we're wrapping up here, you are having a thing on February 1st. You might want to talk about that.
Yeah. If you want to join me for more of this sort of stuff on February the 1st, I'm doing quite a different presentation to this, really. I'm doing basically a PowerPoint screen share. It's a 50-slide PowerPoint screen share with some stuff, some more background, some scientific background in gentle detail. I'm not a scientist, but a lot of really good practical information you can take away from that. And use in your actual teaching from this presentation. There's templates you can use and all sorts of things in there, and some really good learning, I think. So you just contact me on myswingfixer@gmail.com, and you can sign up. It's only $49.99. So it's on the 1st of February, 11 o'clock Eastern time for an hour.
Awesome. Sounds good. That'll be great. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Then we can mention tomorrow. I know there's times wrapping up here. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. We have Joel Goglia and Sharon Stone, and then
Sharon Stone,
not the Sharon Stone.
Oh
yeah,
Sharon Stone.
Sarah. What I say?
Sharon Stone's an actress.
Yeah.
I know
the image you just got in your head. I know the image you just got in your head. I know the image you just got.
My bad. Okay,
Anyway.
and then at 3 o'clock we have Adam and Terry Rawls. So hopefully I get that one right.
You did.
I wanted to. We didn't get time for it, but you can learn more about shoes and the effect on your swing shoes in my little presentation. I wanted just to touch on it today with Scott, but I think we're wrapping up.
Yeah.
But you're going to be surprised that you'd be surprised the difference that shoes make. And I'm at the point with elite players that I tune their shoes to their feet to their swing.
Yeah.
Because I've seen the difference it makes. It's just unbelievable.
Right. And I always tell golf instructors, like, Swing Catalyst measures the connection of the golfer to the ground, and what's between the golfer and the ground is their shoes. So that has a massive effect on the types of forces you can put into the ground and the types of things you can, the types of motions that the club makes. So yeah, 100%. I think tuning the shoes to the human to their swing is super important, and that's something we're. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just briefly. I mean, that's same swing, just two different pairs of shoes. Look at the difference in the vertical force.
Wow.
And the big picture of the pressure.
Right.
Exactly the same swing, just changed to a shoe that suits me compared to one that doesn't.
Interesting. And I really like the change in the rate of force development too. You can see how much more quickly that thing shoots up to a spike. And so Yeah, that's super interesting, and that's something we're working on with Swing Catalyst to try to really dial in, and our partnership with Under Armour, to try to see how different shoes affect the swings, and so hopefully we'll have some information about that in our educational programs coming soon. But we have 3 more seconds. Are they going to kick us out? All right. Thank you so much, everyone.